Hi, lovelies. How are we today? My name is KamikazeKitten, and welcome to Cammie's Corner. I know I haven't been around in a few weeks, probably over a month since my last video, so I do apologise because I did say in the last video that it would be next week, but next week never came. I got ill. I had the worst December. It was brutal. Okay, but we're here. We're surviving. It's fine. We're all good. Okay, so today I've been requested this case by one of my very wonderful followers who was interested in this case and interested to hear kind of my perspective on it as well. I won't be mentioning the victims' names just purely out of respect for the families. I want to try and be respectful and stuff, so we're just gonna kind of carry on and see how we get on. I've done a hell of a lot of research on this case, and let me tell you, it was a case like it blew my mind. Now, this is a case that a lot of people in the UK are really familiar with. Now, I know some of my friends over the pond are probably not. So, which is actually a friend of mine from the US has requested this story. It's a rough one. A little bit of a disclaimer. We're dealing with animal cruelty. We're dealing with murder involving children, rape, all sorts of drug misuse, alcoholism, the lot. Right, it's a heavy one. So I appreciate if this video is not for you. There's always next time. There's always the next case. Okay, so please don't feel that if this isn't for you, please close it down. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about the Moors murders, which happened in Saddleworth Moor back in the, I want to say, 60s. I have got my notes in front of me, but I'm not particularly looking at them right now. But we're just going to keep going and see how we go. So, without further ado, I will shut my pretty little mouth and let's get on with the story. So, we'll start with Ian Brady. Ian Brady was born in the Gorbals in Glasgow on the 2nd of January 1938. 38. Sorry, I realised I covered my mouth when I did that. His mother was Margaret Penny Stewart, and she was an unmarried tea room waitress back then. And, back in those days, if you got pregnant and you were unmarried, it was very much frowned upon. Very, very frowned upon. Brady's dad, however, he was never really truly identified. According to Margaret, it was a reporter from Glasgow who died 3 months before Brady was actually born. So it was still undetermined, but we'll see. So he grew up without a dad, and a few months after he was born, Margaret tried her best, to try and raise him. Single mother in the 30s, 40s was not an easy thing to do. So she seeks some support, and she actually managed to get Brady adopted, or taken into care. I couldn't actually see if he was actually fully adopted. I did try and look that up, but everybody just kept kind of saying, like all the sources and stuff, just kept saying that he went into care. But it was a few months after he was born, he went to a family, by Mary and John Sloan, and they actually had 4 kids of their own already. So, they were fairly seasoned within families and bringing kids up as such. But Margaret did go and visit him. She was in and out of his childhood quite a bit. She still, she was there for him as best she possibly could. She did end up moving to Manchester with her partner. I believe she married the dude. But we'll get into that a little bit further in the story. But yeah, she tried her best. I can't imagine, back in the day when it was frowned upon. First of all, you're pregnant before, you even get married. And then, you're having to raise this baby. And I don't think she had much family. I tried to figure that out as well. I tried to kind of do a little bit of research on her, but there wasn't really much I could find. So I don't think she had a lot of family either that could help her, which is sad, really, when you think about it. It's quite sad. But yeah, so she did what she could. various authors over the years had reported Brady to be quite a boisterous, I want to say. I want to put that in the most kindest terms possible. He was quite boisterous in a sense that he was a little shit. Okay, let's just put it in that. He's a little shit. Put it this way. He boasted at the age of 10 that he had... Now, pre-warning, guys, this is the animal cruelty bit, so I'm really, really sorry. Cover your ears if this is not good for you. But he boasted about killing a cat at the age of 10. Now, that one really got me, because as you guys know, I have cats. I have 2 beautiful kitties. So when I read that, I got immediately angry. I was so uncomfortable. I was quite upset when I read that. But, yeah. Then he also said that he burnt a cat, and he also used to cut rabbits' heads off, and he used to throw stones at dogs. What a fantastic child you are, you piece of shit. Anyway, here we go. So, Brady attended Shawhead Academy, which was a school for above average students. So, that tells me that he did have a little bit of a brain on him, right? But as he went in his teenage years, his behaviour did worsen quite a bit. He did have a girlfriend, but again, that was very short-lived because of his violence. He actually held a flip knife to her throat because she went to the dance with another boy. Yep. So she was like, nope, absolutely not. Red flag. Good for her. Good for her. Telling no. You know what I mean? I'd have done the same thing. That is a pure lie. Back in the day, I was an absolute walkover. I probably would have stayed being like, I'm so sorry. Okay. But anyway. Shut up, Cammy. Nobody cares. But yeah, his girlfriend at the time, her name was Evelyn. And yeah, she got out when she did, so good for her. Good for her. Brady had appeared in court again before his 17th birthday, but this time he had 9 charges against him. So, yeah, 9 freaking charges. Like, what on the earth? But yeah, he ended up being sent away to a borstal. Because of his age, you know what I mean? But he ended up being placed on probation on the condition that he moved with his mum. So this is where his mum comes back into play. So his mum moved into Manchester, and she had married an Irish fruit porter. So he had his own little fruit market, and he ended up giving Brady a job. I think he was trying to kind of get him on the straight and narrow. But Brady ended up taking Patrick's name, which, you know, Ian Brady. He's tarnished that name forever. Good for you, Brady. Asshole. But yeah, Patrick was a decent enough stepfather. You know, he gave him a job, tried to get him on the straight and narrow. Must have been quite hard back then as well, especially when you're a step parent, you know. I can't imagine that wouldn't have been easy for the guy. But he tried. He did try. Within a year of moving to Manchester, Brady was caught for stealing a sack full of lead seals. I don't actually know. Again, I don't know where he got them from. I don't know. Like, there wasn't much said about it. We just know that he tried to smuggle them out of the market. And he got caught. So after he got caught, because he was under the age of 18, he was sent away to a borstal for 2 years, and that was supposed to be like a form of training. I don't know what they were going to train him for, try and be a better person or something, I don't know. But clearly didn't work, did it? But yeah, he moved to London, and then he ended up being transferred to Hatfield Borstal in West Riding of Yorkshire. He was released in November of 1957. Sorry, was it 57? Yes, it was. It was 57 because he'd returned to Manchester, and he actually decided that he was going to better himself. He was going to take a course and he was going to better his life and become this really good guy. So he decided to go into bookkeeping, and he astonished his mum and stepdad because he would go to the local library and he would take books out on instructions on how to do bookkeeping and stuff like that. And he would spend hours in his bedroom studying so that he can try and get a better job. So, you know, cool. Good for him. Well done. But his parents were really, really happy with Brady for doing that. And it was keeping him out of trouble. It was keeping him quiet. They just kind of wanted him to, just do better. I think his mum, especially, because obviously she did have him in times where it was frowned upon, and I think she just wanted to. She was doing what any mother would do, and just wanted what was best for her son, which is totally fine. I don't hate her for that. That's cool. I don't hate her at all. Actually, it's not her freaking fault. But anyway, in January of 1959, Brady actually started working a clerical job in Millwards, which is where he meets his accomplice during these crimes, which we are just about to talk about in just a minute. I have never hated a woman so much in all my life, right? And I don't mind women. Women are good people, right? I am not one of these women that hates women. I actually think, I like to raise women up and stuff, but she just makes it so freaking difficult. But I tell you, I listened to her audiobook as well, which was the life and death of Myra Hindley. Just that, again, it was for research purposes. I wanted to really make sure that I had enough information for you guys, for you to be able to understand the full ins and outs as best you could, as best I could. And yeah, she was something else, man. But anyway, Brady ended up reading books, teaching himself German. But after teaching himself German, he decided he enjoyed Nazi things. He was interested in Nazi books and stuff. So just as we think that we're going really, we're going in the right direction, he just takes another sinister turn. So yeah. But anyway, colleagues that worked with him in Millwards had said that he was a quiet man, but he had a bit of a short temper. So a lot of people did tend to avoid him, and I don't blame them, because I would do the same. I would definitely avoid this man. And see, when I was doing my research as well, right? Side note, when I was doing my research, this disturbed the hell out of me, right? Now, I get that people are infatuated with serial killers like Ted Bundy and Dahmer and all this kind of stuff, right? People are infatuated with these people. No! Seriously, get a better taste in men in general. Like, seriously, like, what? These people had done awful things. You know what I mean? Ruined people's lives. Ruined their families. Oh, I swear. Right, but you should see some of the comments that people leave. Especially on YouTube and stuff, saying, "Oh my God, he's so handsome. He's my idol." No, fuck off. I do not want to see any comments like that in my comment section, because I swear I will be very upset. Like, no, absolutely not. I do not approve. Cami does not approve. But anyway, yeah, I swear to God, some of the comments that you see online, and people are like, romanticizing these people, it's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. But yeah, I didn't really see much about that with Myra. It was mostly like, she's a monster and she's this and she's that. But then there was people that were like, yeah, but she's a reformed woman. No, she's still a piece of shit. Fuck off. Anyway, back to the story. Sorry guys, I get very passionate about these stories sometimes. Right, so who is Myra Hindley? Let's go on to talk about her. So Myra was born in Crumpsall. I always get this, Crumpsall. I think that's what it's called. In July 1942 to parents Nellie and Bob Hindley. Now again, 1940s, times weren't great. Housing wasn't great. Place was a bit of a mess. It just is what it is, Plus we were in the middle of a war. Oh, was it just after the war? Just after the war. Was it just after? No, it was the middle of the war. Shut up, Cammy. You're rambling. Anyway, so yeah, times were hard. They lived in a little house. It was kind of known. It was a working class area, but it was known as like the Victorian slums. Like, that's kind of what it was like. She had to share a bed with her parents practically. So her parents had a double bed, and then she had this little single bed that was like attached to it. So like the living conditions weren't great, But yeah, her father was an alcoholic, so that seems fun. He was in the parachute regiment, and he was kind of known to be a bit of a hard man, right? So he was quite hard on his kids and his wife. He used to beat them, actually. When I read that, I thought that was quite sad. Because, like, no, just no, right? But, yeah, so he was a bit of an asshole. But he taught Myra to be quite tough. So, here's an example. When Myra was 8 years old, she was just out in the street playing with her friends, and this boy approaches her, and he pushes her down, and scratches her cheeks, like both cheeks right down here. So naturally she's upset. She runs to her dad, tells her dad what's happened, and he actually turns and says to her, basically, if you don't get back out there and, kick his arse, I'm gonna leather you. And Myra was obviously like, what? Okay. So she ends up going back up to the boy and pushes him down and just starts punching, like just absolutely going for it, absolutely punching hell out this wee boy. But he left her alone after it. I mean, that's what they say, don't they? As soon as you get a bully, just hit them, start punching them, and they'll leave you alone. Apparently, that's what they do. Not in my experience. Mine's continued. But you fight back. That's essentially what our dad was teaching her. Now, Myra kept diaries, journals, as you all do when you're young. And she actually wrote in her journal, quote, "At 8 years old, I scored my first victory," end quote. So, alarming, 8 years old, you get a victory. Okay. But hey, I suppose we don't know. It doesn't actually say how long she was getting bullied by the boy. It doesn't say anything like that. So, again, I don't really know. Would that be something that I would write if I just battered hell out my bully? I don't know. Don't have a clue. But anyway, so in June of 1957, Myra was out with some friends. She was about 13 at the time, and she was asked by one of her friends to go swimming at a reservoir. Now, this friend of hers, she actually felt quite, she was quite fond of him. And his name was Michael Higgins, his name was. Now, he wasn't a very good swimmer at all. I don't think he could swim at all, actually, from what I read. And, she was like, no, I'm going to just hang out with my friends, like, have a good time, whatever. So he was like, right, cool, I'm going to go. So he goes to this reservoir, and while she's out, there's these other kids that run to Myra and is like, Michael is drowning. He's drowning in the reservoir. He can't get out. Myra is a really good swimmer, right? So she runs to this reservoir, like runs full pelt. By the time she gets to the reservoir, the poor boy's dead. So she was absolutely devastated because she actually started blaming herself and said that if she had just gone swimming with them, that wouldn't have happened. They would have still been alive. She felt so terrible for the family, just felt terrible in general. She actually started a collection for the wreath for his funeral, which I think is quite a nice thing to do. 13 years old, you're going around collecting for a family, like that's sweet. So, okay, good for her. Fair enough. Okay, I can accept that. That's fine. But yeah, so she collected for this young boy, but she did say in her book as well that she did still blame herself after years later. She often thought about him, and she just wished that she'd have just went that day, and he probably would have still been alive. So, it was quite a sad story, really. Myra's first job was a junior clerk. She worked for an electrician, like, engineering company. And she was well liked. She typed, she ran errands, she, just done all your little clerical duties. And everyone was quite fond of her. She was, like I say, she was well liked. So much so that when she lost her first ever paycheck, the girls actually done like a little whip round, and she managed to get her first week's paycheck back, and it was really nice of them to do. Now, the week later, it was said in her book a week later that she actually tried the same trick again, because she obviously thought, oh, these people are giving me money, I know what we're doing here. But she was instantly found out. Like, the workers weren't stupid. Do you know what I mean? They were just like, really, bitch? So her credibility had definitely gone down. Nobody had helped her after that. And, you know, fair enough. I don't think I would either if I found that out, if I'm honest. But yeah, she done weekly judo lessons as well, but it was also said that her sparring partners did not feel comfortable sparring with her, because when she had a grip of them and it was time to release, she would release really slowly, causing them, still obviously they're in pain, so she's causing this pain by, she's not letting go anytime soon, but she would stare at them, like intensely stare, like right into their eyes while she was letting them go. So yeah, no, I wouldn't want to spar with her either. Like, fuck that, seriously. Like, no, just no. But yeah, so she then took another clerical job in Gorton, and it was just another engineering company, but she was dismissed because she was never there. She was absent all the time. She didn't go to her work. That's what happens, kids. Go to your damn work. Don't be an asshole. Go make your money. But yeah, she lost her job after 6 months. She was absent all the time, and the work were just like, fuck that. And see, back then, right, workplaces, side note, back then workplaces were extra brutal. Like, there wasn't really any major rules back then. It was a case of, you show up to your work or you don't. If you don't, you get sacked. That's it, right? Whereas now it's so different. Like, you need to go through disciplinaries, you get chance after chance. Don't get me wrong, I know that all places aren't like that, but majority are. So yeah, it's a strange one. Strange one for sure. So Myra then joined Millwards as a typist, and she joined in January of 1961. And when she started working there, that's where she met Ian Brady. And let me tell you, my lovies, let me tell you, this woman was infatuated with this man. Have you ever seen, like, you know, your friend fancy a guy and just completely just go for it? Do you know what I mean? Like, just be obsessed. Well, this is what Myra was like. So Myra, again, kept diaries as she was older as well. And she used to write about Ian. She used to write about their interactions, their non-interactions. I'm talking, like, you know, she would write in her books saying, you know, oh, Ian didn't talk to me today. Or, you know, oh, I saw Ian today, but he didn't speak to me. And, like, she would write how she felt about it. But then there was days where she wouldn't speak to Ian, but she would say how she felt about him. And, like, it was crazy. It was very back and forth. Very, very back and forth. So, her journals were a bit, you know, all over the place in that sense. But, you know, I don't know. It's a hard one because, you know, when you are young, you're 18, 19, that's kind of what happens, isn't it? You just kind of get a little bit too obsessed with someone, and then that's just kind of the way of it. But yeah, she was super obsessed with the guy, but she didn't actually go out on a proper date with him until December of 1961. They started dating, and they used to go to the movies quite a lot, and they used to go and see like some really questionable movies. Now, both Myra and Brady both kind of, like, she says that they went to see one movie, and he said that they actually went to see a different movie. So their accounts are slightly different, especially with the research I was doing. That both their accounts are a little bit different, but who cares what movie they seen, man? They still went out to the pictures. But what they would do after the pictures, they would go back to Myra's house and drink German wine, and they would talk about, you know, Ian's fascination with Germans, Nazis, all the fucking worst things of the day, you know. But Myra was so obsessed with this guy that she went along with it. You know, she was like, oh yeah, I like Nazis too. Woo. Like, that's kind of how, like, oh my god, like, you like Germany? I love Germany. Like, here's some German wine. Like, that's kind of, I don't know. I'd imagine that's how she would have been. In my head, that's how I imagine she would have been. It's not funny. It's not funny, Cammy. Shut up. Shut up, Cammy. It's not funny. I'm laughing because I don't know. Like, you're 18 and you kind of go along with whatever the guy likes, don't you? You just kind of have that. You have that little moment, don't you? You just kind of, I don't know. I don't know. Shut up, Cammy. Just shut up. Sorry, I had to do eyeliner. I can never do eyeliner on camera. So if you just give me a moment. There we go. Okay, and we're back. So, Brady had actually given Myra a bunch of reading material, such as, like, again, it was all Nazi shit, do you know what I mean? It would be really ridiculous shit he would give her. He would give her, you know, he would even give her explicit books, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And he would actually have her read to him during lunchtime, you know, have her read out, you know, different chapters and, you know, just sitting there casually having your lunch and then they're talking about that kind of shit. I mean, what a way to make someone feel uncomfortable, you know? Just like, each to their own. I'm not judging. See, if you're into stuff like that, like, cool, good for you, but just keep that shit away from me. You know what I mean? Live and let live. Do your own thing, but just don't do it around me. I don't think that's hard. It's not necessarily me judging. I just don't really want to. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I know what I mean. It's fine. I know what I mean. But yeah, I don't imagine sitting in a lunchroom with those two would have been the most comfortable experience. Especially with the kind of things that they would talk about. Myra specifically mentions a few things in her book, but again, it's not appropriate to mention, so I just won't. But yeah, they used to sit and have long conversations. Ian, it was actually said that Ian used to have her dress up in Nazi uniform, and he used to take like photographs of her and stuff, like explicit photos, and you know, there is actually images of her in those kind of uniforms. And yeah, it's quite disturbing actually. She even looks a bit crazy. Like, I know that's a bit rude, but it's true. She does. She looks like pure crazy in it. But yeah, so the dates were a regular thing. They would go to the movies. They would come home again. They would watch explicit movies, pornographic movies. I don't know why I'm laughing. I'm such a child. But they would watch things like that, and they would just get drunk on German wine and just, you know, enjoy each other. I mean, each to their own. Cool. Good for them. But yeah, so eventually Myra's look started to change. So she bleached her hair like really platinum blonde. She used to wear crimson red lipstick. She would change the way that she would dress, and friends commented on how she would dress. So usually she would just dress like, you know, just like anybody would dress. But then she started wearing like mini skirts, leather jackets, you know, high boots, like high, like knee highs and stuff like that. And I'm sorry I'm laughing again because that's the kind of shit that I usually wear, but I'm not a shithead, so it's fine. Like, it's fine. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that she used to do. Her look changed entirely, so it was a bit of a change, especially around her friends and stuff. It was like, whoa, like, what's happened to you? Do you know what I mean? Bleach blonde hair, bright red lips, and all right, cool. You look great. You know, like, I'd imagine that's what our friends would have said, but I'm not 100% sure. There's not much of an account on that either, if I'm honest. In 1963, Myra had actually passed her driving test after failing it 3 times. And pretty much as soon as she passed her test, she went out and bought a minivan. They had decided that they were going to start, you know, planning bank robberies. That was initially what their crimes were going to be, bank robberies. But unfortunately, that had changed to more sinister crimes, which we're just about to talk about. So again, I'm not going to be mentioning the victims' names purely out of respect for the families. Is try to be as respectful as I can here. But yeah, so here we go. So their first victim was in 1963, July 12th, and Brady had actually turned to Myra and said, you know, I want to commit the perfect crime. I want to, you know, commit the perfect murder, right? So the plan was that he was going to be instructing her to drive the van, and he would be in a motorbike behind her, and he would like flash his light or like give her some form of a signal when he saw a victim that he was deciding that that's who he wanted. So Brady had saw this victim, gave Myra the signal, and Myra felt a bit uncomfortable because she knew the person. Her sister was in the same year as her, or something along those lines. It was a neighbour of some kind. So she wasn't 100%, but Brady was like, no, that's who I want, so that's what we're gonna do. So yeah, she was on her way to a dance, like some form of a school dance, and Myra had stopped and offered her a lift, and the victim was like, yeah, sure, because she knew her, so it was fine. And she'd got into the van, and Myra had said to her, listen, see, before I drop you off, would you mind helping me find my glove? I lost my glove in Saddleworth Moor, or in the moors, or whatever it was. She said, I lost my glove, can you help me look for it? And I'll give you a reward. Now, Myra used to try and tempt our victims by rewarding them with money, records, sweets, all the kind of things that young people would enjoy. Now, she had, when she'd essentially got her in, the young girl was quite happy to go help her find this lost glove, So on they go to the moors, and when they get out the minivan, Brady comes up behind them, and she's like, oh, this is my boyfriend, he's here to help us look too. So she goes over, so does Brady. Apparently Myra stays behind, and this is according to her book. Apparently she stays behind and that she doesn't participate in what's happening. But other sources actually say, well, no, she did participate. So we're not 100% sure whether she did or not because there's so many sources. But the victim was unfortunately sexually assaulted, murdered, and buried. And this was done by Brady. Now, according to Brady, Myra did, like I say, participate, but there's no solid evidence, if that makes sense, because their accounts are so different and the sources are so different. It's crazy. But yeah, so what they would do is, after they done what they did, Brady used to have to burn his clothes. So he would burn his clothes, his shoes, he would burn everything. They would clean the spade that they dig the hole in, they would clean the van, and then they would just go back and live their normal lives. Pieces of shit. My haunted god, right? See, side note, when I was reading this, I got so angry with this case because, like, how could you stand by your boyfriend and be like, yeah, sure, let's do that. Let's totally do that. Like, what? Like, they say that you have red flags in this day and age. Like, that's not even a red flag. That's a full-on display, you know what I mean? That is a full tapestry of red. Like that. No, Myra. I'm disappointed. I'm not happy with you. So this would be the start of their killing spree. Okay. So their next victim was a few months later in November, where they would go to, it was like a market, like one of those kind of fruit markets, like, all these different stalls and stuff. So what Myra used to do was she purchased a black wig, right? And she used to put this wig on to obviously cover the bleach blonde, because when bleach blonde stands right out, So she would put the black wig on, and she would approach her victim. Now, they were going through the market, and Brady does the signal. That's who he wants. This time it was a boy. So Myra goes up, offers the boy some form of reward to go and, help her either find the glove, help with boxes into a shop. It didn't really, like, the excuses changed each time. But, she ended up offering him a reward. I think it was a bottle of sherry for this one. The boy was like, yeah, sure, not a problem, I'll help you. Okay. So that was fine. So they go, and again, they go up to the moor to find the glove, this infamous glove that she clearly couldn't do without. And again, Brady had taken the victim into the moors, sexually assaulted him, murdered him with a shoelace, I believe. It was either shoelace or some form of string, and then buried him. Again, they done the usual routine. They would burn the clothes. Honestly, I'm telling you guys, it's a heavy case. It's heavy, and it's not. Now, the third victim was in 1964. Now, this victim, unfortunately, wasn't found. They're still looking for him till this day. And he was actually on his way to his grandmother's house, and he was picked up by the couple. Again, same thing. Taken up to the moors. You get the drift, okay? And again, it was another one where the police were absolutely going off their heads, because these kids are going missing and they have absolutely no idea where to start. They don't have any kind of suspects. They don't have any kind of evidence or any indication as to who this could be. So the police are absolutely going off their heads about it. They're questioning neighbours, they're questioning family members. They even took a victim's stepdad in 4 times in the space of 2 years, and for questioning, they ripped up his house, ripped up the floorboards, because they were convinced that he'd done it. But the guy was cooperative. He was like, listen, I didn't do this. Now imagine being a parent or a step-parent and being accused of doing, being responsible for the disappearance and, potential harm to your child, and you're having your house completely ripped apart. It's crazy. Like, it's so crazy. But I suppose the police had to do what they needed to do. They had no other leads. They had no answers. They were just going crazy about it. They had no witnesses either. Nobody could tell them anything. It was just, honestly. And it was quite frustrating as well, I'd imagine, for the police. It'd be frustrating. But yeah, so that was, yeah, that's a rough one. But anyway, in Boxing Day of 1964, they had yet another victim. This would be victim number 4. So this again was a girl. But this time what they would do is they wouldn't exactly go to the moors. They actually took her back to their house, right? So it was a totally different... I don't know what Brady's thinking was in this one, or Myra's. I don't know whose idea it was exactly to go back to the house. It's not clear of whose idea it is, but that's what they did. They went to the house, and again, same thing. Now, the difference with this one was, right, this piece of shit, Brady, he had an audio tape recorder, and he actually recorded, like, voice recorded the girl crying for her mother, begging just to be let go. And you can actually hear in the tape him, you can actually hear Myra in it, and some of it is a little distorted, you can't hear it all, but majority of it is her just saying that she wants to go home, she won't tell anybody, just please can she go home. It was so disturbing, it's so horrible, and it's just, what? Like, seriously? So, yeah, it was absolutely brutal. It was so, like, when I listened to that part, because they when I say they played it, they didn't play it in the audiobook. They kind of had, like, the transcript of it, and the transcript, obviously, they read it out. So, because they are reading lines and lines, and see the distorted bit, they would go distortion. You know what I mean? And I remember being in work, right? Side note, I remember being in work, because I always listen to audiobooks when I'm in work, just so that I'm typing away and doing what I'm doing. And I remember actually having to physically stop at my desk, and I had to stop what I was doing because I felt so sick to my stomach listening to it. It was horrible. So if you are curious, that audiobook is obviously there, but it's nasty. Don't do it. Don't do it. It actually gave me nightmares. I did not. No. But yeah, according to Myra, she had absolutely nothing to do with it. She was running a bath, apparently, and she had no idea what was going on. But you can hear her in the audio tape talking to the victim. Come on, Myra. Come on, hold it together, honey. Seriously? There's evidence. Evidence. But anyway, that tape was actually found in a suitcase and lost luggage in Manchester Central Station. So what they would do is they would put all the pictures, all the, because Ian used to take pictures. He was a creep, right? He used to take all sorts of fucking weird pictures, and he was just a piece of shit. But anyway, he took the pictures, took the audio tape, took the lot, put it in a suitcase, notebooks with the victims' names on them, all sorts, put them in a suitcase and put them into lost luggage. And Myra kept the ticket stub, and put it in her Bible and used it as a bookmark. A freaking bookmark. Are you real? Like, that's the kind of shit that she would do. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. But, anyway. Their final victim. This was a 17-year-old boy, and he was an apprentice engineer. So, he was going to be, he was an apprentice, he was going to go do things in life. He was actually going to, try and get himself a decent job and, just really, I don't know, just do something with his life. Now, again, he was taken back to the home, right? And they were sitting chilling, actually having a couple of drinks. And for some reason, Brady had turned round to Myra and said, go get your brother-in-law. Now, your brother-in-law's name was, we're going to call him Smith, right? So, Smith, Myra went to go get Smith, and she said to him, listen, don't come in until I give you a signal. Like, I'm just going to go check in the house, see if everything's okay. Now, this is what he told police. This is where it gets, right? So he told police, quote, I waited for about a minute or two and then I heard a scream. It sounded like a woman, and the screams carried on, one after another. Myra shouted, Dave, help him. When I ran, I stood inside the living room and I saw a young lad. Ian was standing over him with a hatchet in his hand, and I heard the blow. It was a terrible hard blow and it sounded horrible. End quote. So, the brother-in-law, Smith, was basically told to take the victim's body up the stairs, but he couldn't carry it himself, so Brady helped him and complained that he sprained his ankle. What a shame! Who fucking cares? Anyway, piece of shit. Sorry. Excuse me. Anyway, so 3 a.m, Smith goes home. Now, bear in mind, he's married to Myra's wife. Myra's wife? What? Myra's sister, right? So he goes home, 3 a.m. She's like, hiya, do you want a cup of tea? He's like, yeah, sure, okay. So he goes to drink the tea, and he just vomits everywhere. And she's like, what the fuck? Right? So he just goes, you know what? Fuck this, I can't do it. So he tells her everything. Everything that happened. He tells her the lot, right? And he's now terrified that Ian is gonna come after him. So, he's worried. He's telling his wife everything. He says he can't believe this has happened, and he's obviously assisted by taking the body upstairs. He didn't know what to do. So she practically begged him, listen, we need to go to the police about this. So they decided not to call from their residence. So I don't exactly know where he went, but he went to a phone box somewhere, and he'd contacted police and told them absolutely everything. And this was about back at 6 a.m, right? So he goes and does that, and he told the police, listen, I'm scared that this guy's going to hurt me. So can you do me a favour and go and deal with this guy, because he's an absolute nut job, right? So, not sure that's what he said. That's what I'm saying he said, okay? But you get it. You get it. But it was also said in Myra's book that when the detectives arrived, they were just like, oh, hey, can we help you? Do you know what I mean? Like, they had absolutely, completely oblivious. And when they'd said they were here due to an altercation, they were like, oh, yeah, it's fine. Like, nothing happened. Everything's fine. So, officers weren't convinced. Myra was a little bit, kind of like, Brady just sat there, cool as a cucumber. They were like, nah, something's wrong. So one of the detectives decide they're going to have a walk through the house, and they discover a door which is locked, and he tells Myra to go get the key, and she's like, oh, it's at work. My key's at work. I don't have a key for that room. He's like, right, okay, cool. Let's go to your work. Then I'll drive you. Let's go to your work, and we can go get the key. So by this point, Myra's panicking, right? And Brady eventually just goes, do you know what? Give them the key. I think Brady knew in his head that that's him. He's been caught. I think that's it, you know. So they open the door to find the final victim. Just the place is a shambles. They find all sorts in that room. They find weapons, which apparently they were planning a big bank heist, apparently, and that's why they needed the weapons. But it was also said that Brady had a fascination with guns. Even though he'd never used one to actually kill anybody, he was always fascinated by them, and that's why he collected them. But he told police that they got into an altercation, and it was a misunderstanding, and it was an accident, right? So he tried to go with the accident route, but didn't work. It didn't go that way. So yeah, it was Ian was taken into custody, but Myra, she wanted to go with him. She wasn't initially arrested at first. She wasn't arrested at first. She was actually arrested a few days later when she was down for accessory to murder, right? So she was down as accessory. So she was actually arrested a few days later. Police were searching the house, found Brady's notebooks, found the ticket stub. They found a notebook with one of the victims' names. They'd found all sorts, right? So then eventually when they got to the suitcases, that's when they found absolutely everything. They found the audio tapes. They found all sorts of shit. And that probably scarred a lot of those police for life because they had to actually sit and listen to it. Now, the audio tape was 16 minutes long and it was actually played in court as well. It was also played to the victim's mother, who had to try and identify if that was her child. Now imagine, side note, imagine being that mother and having to listen to that. That must be absolutely, like, I can't imagine. That must be absolutely horrendous to have to listen to that. But yeah, that's, I swear, honestly, like, if I could just get in a room with these people, I think I'd end up in jail. Honestly, it's just, anyway. Officers had made other inquiries to other neighbours and they had told the police that Saddleworth Moor was actually Myra and Brady's favourite place to go. They had mentioned that that's where they liked to go. They used to take some bottles of wine up and they used to go up there and sit and drink. So on December the 2nd, 1965, Brady and Myra were actually charged with murder and accessory to murder for 3 victims because they managed to identify 3 of the victims with the photographs and everything that they had. But they couldn't quite find the bodies quite yet. Now, I don't have dates and stuff like that about who was found and whatever else. I don't have that, but some were found. So, that's a result in itself. But like I say, one of them was still being searched for today, which is really horrible. So the trial began in April 1966, and in the courts, the police were so concerned about, Myra and Brady being assassinated that they had put these clear, like, bulletproof screens up to try and obviously stop people from attacking them and stuff. Personally, I wouldn't have put the screens up. I would have just totally, like, allowed somebody to come in and do that. Totally. 100%. Sorry, Cammy. Nobody cares about your opinion. Sorry. It's not funny. I just don't like these people. Ever. Like, why would you do that? And just, ugh. Anyway. So, the audio tape was played. Myra claimed that she was down the stairs. She was running a bath. Her story was changing, like, wish-washing. It was crazy. But Brady was sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences, and Myra was only given 2, but with a further 7-year term for harbouring Brady and the knowledge of these murders, right? Technically she should have got 3. She should have got all 3. She was there. She was absolutely there. She should have totally got done for all of them. But anyway, that's the justice system for you. That's just how they roll. But anyway, so following the conviction, now both both of their incarcerations are totally different, right? So we're going to start with Brady first. So following his conviction, Brady was moved to Durham, where he asked to live in solitary confinement. He didn't want to mix with anybody, wanted to be on his own. He'd spent 19 years in a mainstream prison before being diagnosed as a psychopath in November of 1985. He had spent his time just, I don't know, just being a shithead, I guess, because he knew where those victims were, and he refused to cooperate with police. Like, he wasted their time a lot of the time as well, and that just completely sickened me. But he was sent to a high security Park Lane hospital, and then he was later sent to Ashworth Hospital, which was an institution for the mentally ill. They were trying to teach him. What? They were trying to treat him for a mental illness. So Brady had really made it clear he'd never wanted to be released. Like, he made it perfectly clear. He was really content and happy not to be released. He was like, nope, I'm fine. You know, it's cool. I don't want to be released. Myra, however, she, put in constant appeals all the time throughout her years. Even though she denies it in her book, the appeals are there, so. But anyway, Brady had refused to work with the psychiatrists, occasionally corresponded with people outside the hospital, such as Lord Longford and multiple journalists. And Brady had also told forensic psychologist Chris Cowley that he had an aesthetic fascination that he had for guns, right? Such a fascination, even though he'd never killed anyone with one. He always just liked them. He just liked guns. And he also complained. He complained about the conditions of Ashworth. He hated it. He despised being there. I have no sympathy for anybody who complains about their conditions. Like, no. Like, you deserve to be there. You sit there and you think about what you've done, you piece of shit. But anyway, in 1999, he claimed that he was attacked for an hour by staff, and it was an unprovoked attack, and he'd actually broken his wrist during the fight. Shame. Brady had went on multiple hunger strikes, but due to the English laws, which allows patients to refuse treatment, but those that had a mental disorder, under the Mental Health Act of 1983, he had no such right in the treatment for a mental disorder. Like, I don't know, it's a strange one. So basically, they force fed him. So, like, they didn't take his hunger strike seriously, so they force fed him. But they done it within the laws of the Mental Health Act. It's a confusing one. I went down a rabbit hole with that one, and it was so confusing. But that's all the information that I can tell you. But yeah, he actually decided that he was going to appeal to the courts because he felt, I didn't want to be force fed. I was on hunger strike, and you force fed me, and blah blah. But the courts were just like, shut up. Nobody wants to hear you speak. Shut up. Like, that's pretty much it, Now, Brady in 2001 had wrote a book, right? And this was published in the US. I'm not going to name the book because fuck that guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're curious, go on to Google, right? Google it yourself. But I'm not naming it. Piece of shit. The UK was outraged. It was actually a Feral House that published it. And the book was an analysis of serial killers, serial murders, and specific serial killers, because he actually reaccounted his close friendship with Graham Young, who was known as the teacup poisoner, which we'll probably end up doing a video on him as well. He was also a bit nasty. So he also had shared his admiration with Brady on Nazi Germany, and they bonded through that. What a great guy. Fantastic. What a fucking catch. Anyway, so according to a psychologist, Brady had expressed how he regretted Myra's imprisonment, right? And the consequences for their actions, but not the actual crimes themselves. Like, he never showed any kind of remorse. He actually believed that actions speak louder than words, and he tried to donate his kidney for someone in need. But the courts were like, no, you're absolutely not doing that. So they completely denied any kind of blood donation, anything like that he wanted to do. They denied it completely. And good for them. Good for them. Like, side note, do you guys remember the film The Eye, right? Jessica Alba, I believe, was in it. Am I thinking of the right movie? I'm sure I am, right? But she gets somebody else's eye and she sees all this shit. Yeah, fuck that. That scarred me for life. Could you imagine getting an organ from someone like him? Ugh, no. I'd actually take it out myself if I found that out, 100%. But anyway, he began contemplating suicide in 2006. Officials had intercepted 50 paracetamols that were sent to him by a female friend that was cut inside like a hollow book. So they managed to intercept that. And one of the victim's mothers, poor thing, she'd written to both Myra and Brady at the end of 2005, and she said that he claimed that he could take police within 20 yards of where the body is, but the authorities wouldn't allow it. So he was that twisted that he told her that. You know, he made out as if it was the authorities that was stopping it. Like, what? Because it was said that Myra had been out with the police to try and cooperate and help find, you know, the burial sites. So, Brady, you didn't cooperate, dude. You knew exactly what you were doing. You were just being a piece of shit. Like, that's it. End of story. Anyway, in 2012, Brady had returned to prison. He began to have a desire to have another hunger strike, but he claimed that he didn't suffer from paranoid schizophrenia like the doctors had claimed that he was. You know, he was a psycho and this, that, and the other. But he actually had a split personality. He self-diagnosed himself to have a split personality. Fantastic, right? But Brady had ended up receiving end-of-life care, and he ended up dying of a restrictive pulmonary. I can't say that word. I can't speak. Pulmonary disease. At Ashworth Hospital in May of 2017, and he was cremated, and his ashes were disposed of in the sea. Those poor fish. But anyway, Myra, what did she get up to? Now, Myra, she was busy. Now, again, I listened to her audiobook, but because there was so much information, there was so much info, it was just, some of it was hard to remember, and some of it was hard to note down. Some of it I didn't even want to note down. Like, some of it I was like, nope, I'm absolutely not. But she'd made multiple appeals against her conviction. She actually made an appeal immediately after she was sentenced. And she contacted Brady by letter up until 1971. She'd actually ended their relationship, and then after that, their letters to each other were like quite sporadic. And eventually they didn't contact each other at all. But Myra had actually fallen in love with a prison warder named Patricia. And Patricia had planned this escape for Myra, right? She planned it all. She tried to get keys, like impressions of like prison keys, but she also had help from the outside, but she was caught. And she actually served 6 years for her part in the plot. Okay, so it never worked. They got found out. Don't know how they get found out. There wasn't much information on that one. Some say that there was another prisoner that snitched on them to try and get a lesser sentence. But again, I couldn't find a reliable source as to how that happened. They didn't really say much in the audiobook about it, if I'm honest, from what I remember anyway. I just remember that was pulled up. Myra was told that she should spend 25 years in prison and then she'll be considered for parole. But in 1985, Home Secretary Leon Britton had actually increased it to 30 years. And Myra had claimed to be a reformed Catholic. She was a new woman, you know. She would not be a harm to society. But nobody believed her. The victim's mother that we talked about, who contacted Brady, she also contacted Myra. She also sent her a letter as well, basically pleading. And Myra had actually, apparently, had wrote her back and said, "I'm really sorry, I wish I could help you, but I can't." Really? Again, that was another time where I had to stop what I was doing because I was so mad. Like, you had an opportunity to help this woman, put her at rest, and you just couldn't do that because the pair of you are pieces of human garbage. That's the best way that I can describe them politely. Anyway, another victim's mother had actually started a campaign against Myra's release because there was always rumours coming out that Myra was going to be released from prison. And she obviously didn't want that. All the families didn't want that. So she started this big campaign and she was ruthless. You know, she was in newspaper interviews, TV interviews. She was on it, you know. Unfortunately, she did pass away in 1999, but she stated basically that she will kill her. That you know, even the whole family said it. You know, we'll kill her the minute she steps out those prison gates. That's it. You know, she's gone. And I don't blame them. I'd probably be in the same boat because you know, look what they did. Of course, you would be in the same boat. You know. But anyway, in 1987, Myra had appealed, had sorry, admitted that the appeals for parole were just a pack of lies. Um, I'm actually getting a bit ahead of myself because actually in 1985, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, she's another wild one, right? Anyway, as much as I don't like the woman, she actually, this is the one thing I will agree that what she said, and I will stand by what she said, and that is probably the only time that I will ever agree with this woman, okay? But she had told Leon Britton that 30 years for Myra and 40 years for Brady was too short, stating, quote, I do not think either of these prisoners should ever be released from custody. Their crime was the most hideous and cruel in modern times. End quote. So, good for you, Maggie. Good for you. I still don't like you, but good for you. But yeah, so Myra did try and cooperate with the police. She, you know, they tried to disguise her to bring her out of prison to go and try and identify some of the burial sites, but she could never identify them. She said she just couldn't remember or she didn't know. They went round different routes in the moors because there was always reporters there, and they were just all over it. They were always there. It was even rumoured and said that Myra was allowed to go visiting outside prison, apparently. According to the book, anyway, that's what she did. And there was, I believe it was a detective that was with her at the time, or some reporter. It was one of them anyway, and she was sitting with one of the staff's child, and she was sitting with a chocolate bar, and she was like smiling with the chocolate bar, and the guy just turned and just stared at her and was like, "Oh my god, that's how you did it." And he said that it completely shook him to his core because he could see it. He's seen it, and he knew right away, like that was it, like, you know. But anyway, there was rumours that she was getting out of prison, and again, the public were absolutely uproared why she allowed out to visit. It was just, oh, it was constant, right? Absolutely constant. In 1997, December and March 2000, she claimed that again she was a reformed woman. She's no longer a danger to society, and every time she put her claims in, the courts just completely rejected it. They were like, nope, no, no. And in 1999, she was diagnosed with angina, hospitalised, suffering a brain aneurysm. And Ian actually caught wind of this. Ian caught wind of her being hospitalised, and he actually felt, you know, quite, you know, cheated because he's been longing for his death. He didn't want to live, and she gets hit with that. You know, like that's kind of how he felt about it, which was a bit of a strange thing, I guess. I don't know. I'll never understand that man. I never will. I'll never understand him. But in November in 2002, Myra actually died at the age of 60 with bronchial pneumonia at West Suffolk Hospital. And that, my friends, is the story of the Moors murderers. Now, I tell you, this was a hard case. Thank you to the person who did ask me to do this, but at the same time, I never want to talk about these people ever again. I don't ever want to read about them again. They're just nasty pieces of work. Like, it was said that Ian knew exactly where they were, and apparently so did Myra, and they just didn't give those families peace. And even one of the victims is still being searched for today. Like, that is just crazy to me. Like, absolutely crazy. And rest in peace to all those victims. And I am my heart goes out to these families who are in forever heartache because of what these people did. And when it comes to when you're bringing your kids up, you always say, now I'm not a mother, okay, I have two cats, I don't have children, but you always tell your kids, don't talk to strangers, you know, don't do this, don't do that. But back then, it was a different, it was like a different world, People used to leave their doors open at night, kids used to run about the streets and nothing would ever be a danger. And then all of a sudden, this completely shook the UK. It completely shook the UK. And when I read about, all these things, I just think to myself, geez, like, people are really rotten on the inside. Like, they can be rotten on the inside, and especially, I mean, you hear a lot of male serial killers, but then when you hear about the female ones, you do get a little bit extra shocked, especially when there's children involved. Like, you do get shocked. You're like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, you do get like that. I don't really know how to end these kind of videos because it's a very terrible tale. It's honestly. But anyway, rest in peace to those who have unfortunately passed away during that time, and rest in peace to especially the victim who has not been found yet. And I do hope that one day they do make some progress and they do actually find them. I really, really do. Because I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. But yeah, I'm shocked. Let me know who you want me to talk about next week. I am working on a couple of different cases at the moment, so please feel free to put your suggestions down below. Or if you do have me on Discord, please feel free to send me a message and give me some ideas, and we'll see how far we get. But yeah, make sure you guys are safe out there. That world is absolutely horrible, especially in this day and age right now. It is a fucking terrifying world that we live in. So make sure that you stay safe. Make sure you keep your family safe as best you possibly can. And I will see you guys